Nurse notices. Something strange about woman in coma, but when police arrive. Everyone is shocked. Chapter 1: The Unusual Discovery. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital in downtown Chicago hummed their eternal song as nurse Sarah Mitchell completed her evening rounds on the 4th floor. Outside, November wind rattled the windows, carrying the first hints of winter across Lake Michigan. Sarah had worked in the intensive care unit for 12 years, long enough to recognize when something wasn't quite right. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this incredible true story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our amazing stories. And don't forget to leave a like if you're already hooked. Room 412 housed Emma Rodriguez, a 32-year-old woman who had been in a coma for 3 months following a severe car accident on the Kennedy Expressway. The accident had left her with traumatic brain injury, and doctors had given her family little hope for recovery. Her husband, Marcus Rodriguez, visited daily, sitting by her bedside for hours, holding her hand and talking to her as if she could hear every word. Sarah pushed open the door to Emma's room, her practiced eyes immediately scanning the monitors. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, all stable, as they had been for weeks. But something caught her attention. Emma's fingers were moving, not the involuntary twitches she'd seen before, but deliberate, purposeful movements. Emma? Sarah moved closer, her heart rate quickening. Emma, can you hear me? The woman's eyelids fluttered, barely perceptible, but unmistakable. Sarah had seen thousands of coma patients, and she knew the difference between random reflexes and conscious response. This was different. She pressed the call button. Dr. Patterson, please come to room 412 immediately. While waiting, Sarah gently took Emma's hand. Emma, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then, a faint pressure. Weak, but deliberate. Dr. James Patterson arrived within minutes, his gray hair slightly disheveled from a long shift. At 58, he was one of the hospital's most experienced neurologists, having spent 3 decades studying brain injuries and coma patients. What do we have, Sarah? Voluntary movement, doctor, and I think she responded to verbal commands. Dr. Patterson conducted a series of tests, shining lights in Emma's eyes, checking reflexes, asking her to respond in various ways. Each test revealed the same conclusion. Emma Rodriguez was waking up. This is remarkable, Dr. Patterson said, reviewing her charts. Given the severity of her initial injuries, I honestly didn't expect this level of recovery. We need to monitor her closely over the next 48 hours. If you're enjoying this story so far, please drop a comment below telling us what city you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers around the world. Over the next 2 days, Emma's consciousness gradually returned like dawn breaking over the Chicago skyline. She began opening her eyes for longer periods, tracking movement with her gaze and attempting to speak, though her words were initially slurred and difficult to understand. Marcus was beside himself with joy. I knew she'd come back, he told Sarah, tears streaming down his face. I never stopped believing. But Sarah noticed something that troubled her. Each time Marcus entered the room, Emma's heart rate spiked dramatically on the monitors. At first, Sarah attributed it to excitement. After all, seeing your husband after 3 months of darkness would certainly provoke an emotional response. However, as Emma's cognitive functions improved, Sarah observed something more disturbing. When Marcus held Emma's hand, the woman's breathing became rapid and shallow. Her eyes, though still weak, showed what Sarah could only describe as fear. On the 3rd day of Emma's awakening, Sarah was changing the IV when Emma managed to speak clearly for the first time. Help. Emma's voice was barely a whisper, raspy from months of disuse. What is it, Emma? What do you need? Sarah leaned in close. Emma's eyes darted toward the door, then back to Sarah. With tremendous effort, she spoke again. Not accident. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What do you mean, Emma? The car accident wasn't an accident? Emma's fingers gripped Sarah's hand with surprising strength. Marcus. Before she could say more, the door opened. Marcus walked in, carrying his usual coffee from the Starbucks downstairs, wearing his characteristic smile. How's my beautiful wife doing today? Sarah watched Emma's reaction carefully. The monitors confirmed it, heart rate jumping from 72 to 110 beats per minute in seconds. Emma's entire body tensed, and her eyes widened with unmistakable terror. "I'll give you two some privacy," Sarah said carefully, making a mental note to discuss this with Dr. Patterson immediately. In the hallway, Sarah found Dr. Patterson reviewing another patient's chart. "Doctor, I need to speak with you about Emma Rodriguez. I think something's wrong." She explained what Emma had said and the physiological responses she'd observed whenever Marcus was present. Dr. Patterson listened intently, his expression growing more serious. "Those are significant observations, Sarah. But we need to be very careful here. We're talking about serious accusations, and Emma's cognitive function is still recovering. She could be confused, disoriented. Brain injury patients sometimes develop false memories or paranoia during recovery. I understand that, doctor, but her fear response is very real. I've seen trauma responses before. This looks like PTSD. What do you think is happening here? Share your theories in the comments below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. You won't want to miss what happens next." Dr. Patterson nodded slowly. "Let's monitor the situation closely. I'll schedule a psychiatric evaluation. In the meantime, keep detailed notes of all your observations. If there's even a possibility that Emma was harmed intentionally, we have an obligation to investigate." That evening, Sarah was assigned to the night shift on the 4th floor. Around 11 p.m., when the hospital corridors were quiet, except for the distant sounds of medical equipment and hushed conversations, she checked on Emma again. Emma was awake, staring at the ceiling. When Sarah entered, the woman's eyes immediately focused on her with an intensity that was startling. "You believe me?" Emma managed to ask. Sarah sat down in the chair beside the bed. "Emma, I need you to tell me what happened. Take your time. Can you remember the accident?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. Speaking was clearly exhausting, but she pushed through, her words coming in short, labored phrases. "Arguing. In car, found out. He was stealing. From his company, hundreds of thousands. I said. I would tell. He got angry. So angry." Sarah listened, her notepad ready, documenting everything. "He grabbed wheel. We were on expressway. He jerked it. Sent us. Toward barrier. At last second. He jumped out. Driver's side. Left me." Emma's breathing became labored, and the monitors began beeping warnings. Sarah knew she needed to let her rest. "It's okay, Emma. You don't have to say more right now, but I believe you, and we're going to help you." The next morning, Sarah went straight to the hospital's patient advocate office and then to Dr. Patterson. Together, they reviewed Chicago PD's accident report from 3 months earlier. According to the report, Marcus had sustained minor injuries and claimed he'd been thrown from the vehicle on impact. Emma had been trapped inside when the car hit the concrete barrier at 65 miles per hour. The investigation had been routine, ruled as a tragic accident caused by wet road conditions and possible speeding. "We need to contact the police," Dr. Patterson said firmly. "If what Emma is saying is true, this is attempted murder." Sarah agreed, though she felt a knot of anxiety in her stomach. "Marcus visits every day, doctor. If he finds out Emma is talking, if he knows she's telling people what really happened. I'll call them now. In the meantime, we'll restrict visitors to immediate family only, and I'll request a security presence outside her room. Hit that like button if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, and make sure you're subscribed because the next chapter reveals everything." Detective Linda Chen of the Chicago Police Department arrived at St. Mary's Hospital within 2 hours. At 43, she was a seasoned investigator with the Special Victims Unit, having worked hundreds of cases involving domestic violence and attempted homicide. Sarah and Dr. Patterson met her in a private conference room and explained the situation. Detective Chen listened without interruption, taking detailed notes. "I'll need to interview Emma directly," Chen said, "and I'll want to review all medical records from the night of the accident. Sarah, you mentioned observing physical trauma responses. Can you describe those in detail?" Sarah went through everything she'd documented: the elevated heart rate, the fear response, the changes in breathing patterns whenever Marcus was present. Those are consistent with PTSD and trauma response, Chen confirmed. I've seen it many times in domestic violence cases. The body remembers even when the conscious mind is impaired. Detective Chen spent an hour with Emma, recording her statement carefully. Despite Emma's weakness and difficulty speaking, her account was consistent and detailed. She described the argument, Marcus's rage when she threatened to report his embezzlement, the terrifying moment when he grabbed the steering wheel, and the last thing she remembered, seeing his silhouette running away from the crashed vehicle while she remained trapped inside, unable to move, darkness closing in. Emma, this is incredibly brave of you, Chen said gently. I know this is difficult. We're going to investigate thoroughly. Do you know where Marcus might have been stealing money from? Westfield. Construction. Emma managed. He's accountant there. I found statements, bank account, I didn't know about. After leaving Emma's room, Detective Chen made several calls. First to the Financial Crimes Division, requesting they pull records for Marcus Rodriguez and Westfield Construction. Second to her partner, requesting background checks and surveillance. We need to move carefully, Chen told Dr. Patterson and Sarah. If Marcus Rodriguez realizes we're investigating, he could flee or destroy evidence. For now, we maintain normal appearances. Marcus can continue his visits, but with security present, discreetly. We'll tell him it's standard hospital security. Sarah, continue documenting Emma's responses, but don't let on that you know anything. Drop a comment telling us. Would you have noticed the signs that Sarah noticed? And if you're loving this story, smash that like button. The next 3 days were tense. Marcus continued his daily visits, bringing flowers, speaking softly to Emma, playing the role of devoted husband perfectly. To anyone watching, he was the picture of loving concern. But Sarah, now aware of the truth, saw everything differently. She noticed how Marcus's smiles never quite reached his eyes, how his questions about Emma's recovery seemed less about concern and more about assessment, trying to determine how much she could remember, how much she could communicate. Emma, for her part, played her role remarkably well. With Detective Chen's coaching, she showed appropriate responses to Marcus, not the warm recognition a wife might show, but the confused, gradual recognition consistent with someone recovering from severe brain trauma. It was exhausting for her, and Sarah could see the toll it took. Meanwhile, Detective Chen's investigation was uncovering damning evidence. Financial records showed Marcus had embezzled over $340,000 from Westfield Construction over 18 months, creating fake vendor accounts and routing payments to his secret bank account. The company hadn't detected it yet, but Emma's discovery of the bank statements had threatened to expose everything. Phone records from the day of the accident showed Marcus had searched online for how to stage car accidents and can coma patients remember in the hours before the crash. His car's GPS data, recovered from the insurance company, showed he'd driven to a Cash for Gold store immediately after leaving the hospital on the night of the accident, where he'd sold Emma's jewelry, including her grandmother's wedding ring, for $8,000. This man is cold, Detective Chen told her partner. He tries to kill his wife, then immediately starts liquidating her assets. We have enough to arrest him, but I want to do it right. When we move, we want airtight evidence for the prosecutor. On day 7 of Emma's recovery, Detective Chen set the plan in motion. Dr. Patterson scheduled a family meeting, ostensibly to discuss Emma's recovery progress and rehabilitation plans. Marcus was invited, along with Emma's mother, Patricia Lopez, who had flown in from Phoenix when she'd heard her daughter was waking up. The meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. in a private conference room on the 2nd floor. Marcus arrived punctually, dressed in a business suit carrying a leather portfolio. He seemed relaxed, confident. What Marcus didn't know was that Detective Chen and 2 other officers were waiting in an adjacent room, watching through a one-way mirror. And Dr. Patterson had wired the conference room for recording. Chapter 2. The Confrontation. The conference room at St. Mary's Hospital overlooked Michigan Avenue, where afternoon traffic moved like blood through Chicago's arteries. Patricia Lopez sat across from Marcus Rodriguez, her weathered hands clasped tightly together, dark circles under her eyes testament to 3 months of praying for her daughter's recovery. Dr. Patterson entered carrying Emma's medical file, followed by Sarah Mitchell, who took a seat near the door. Marcus smiled pleasantly at everyone, the picture of a concerned husband. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Patterson began. "I wanted to discuss Emma's remarkable recovery and what we can expect moving forward. Before we continue with this intense chapter, please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell and give us a like. This story is about to get even more dramatic." In the adjacent room, Detective Chen watched Marcus carefully on the monitor. Her partner, Detective Robert Torres, stood beside her, along with Officer Michelle Davis, ready to move when signaled. "Emma's cognitive functions are returning faster than we initially projected," Dr. Patterson continued. "Her memory, in particular, is becoming clearer each day." Sarah noticed Marcus's jaw tighten slightly. It was almost imperceptible, but she'd been watching him for days now. She recognized the micro-expression, concern, perhaps even fear, quickly masked. "That's wonderful news," Marcus said smoothly. "I knew my wife was a fighter. Does this mean she's remembering things from before the accident?" "Yes," Dr. Patterson said carefully. "In fact, her memories of the day of the accident are becoming remarkably detailed." Patricia Lopez leaned forward. "Has she said anything about what happened? The police report said it was wet roads, but Emma is such a careful driver. I never understood how she could crash like that." Marcus shifted in his seat. "The roads were terrible that night. Remember? The investigation concluded it was an accident. These things happen." "Yes, that's what the initial report said," Dr. Patterson agreed. "But sometimes new information comes to light." The room fell silent. Marcus looked between Dr. Patterson and Sarah, his expression still controlled, but his hands now gripping the armrests of his chair. "What kind of new information?" Marcus asked, his voice carefully neutral. Dr. Patterson glanced toward the one-way mirror. It was time. "Mr. Rodriguez, Emma has been communicating with us. Her account of what happened that night differs significantly from your statement to the police." Marcus's face went pale. "She's confused. Brain injury patients often have false memories, distorted recollections. I read about it online. Whatever she thinks happened..." "She says you caused the accident deliberately," Patricia Lopez interrupted, her voice breaking. "She told me yesterday, Marcus. My daughter said you tried to kill her." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "That's insane. I love my wife. She's confused, traumatized. You can't believe the delusions of someone who's been in a coma for 3 months." Sarah remained silent, documenting everything, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. "Mr. Rodriguez, please sit down," Dr. Patterson said firmly. "No, I don't think I will." Marcus grabbed his portfolio. "This is ridiculous. I've been here every single day taking care of Emma, praying for her recovery. And now you're accusing me based on the confused memories of a brain injury patient? I'm calling my lawyer." What do you think Marcus should do? Tell us in the comments, and make sure to like this video if you're completely absorbed in this story. Detective Chen's voice came through Dr. Patterson's hidden earpiece. "Bring him in." Dr. Patterson nodded slightly. "Mr. Rodriguez, before you go, there's someone who'd like to speak with you." The door opened and Detective Chen entered, followed by Detectives Torres and Officer Davis. Chen held up her badge. "Marcus Rodriguez, I'm Detective Linda Chen with the Chicago Police Department. Please sit down. We need to talk." Marcus's face went from pale to red. "I want my lawyer, right now." "That's your right," Chen said calmly, pulling out a chair and sitting down across from him. "But I think you should hear what we've discovered first. You're free to leave at any time, but I promise you this conversation is in your best interest." Marcus remained standing, his hand on the door handle, visibly calculating his options. Finally, he sat down slowly, his portfolio clutched against his chest like a shield. "We've been investigating Emma's accident for the past week," Chen began. "We've uncovered some interesting information. Would you like to tell us about the Westfield construction accounts?" Marcus's eyes widened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Because we have records showing that over the past 18 months, you embezzled $340,000 from your employer by creating fake vendor accounts. Emma discovered this, didn't she?" No, that's not. We have the bank statements, Marcus. We have the fake vendor invoices you created. We have the routing numbers for your secret offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Patricia Lopez gasped. Marcus, how could you? Detective Torres stepped forward, opening a folder and laying out documents on the table. We also have your phone records from the day of the accident. Interesting search history. How to stage car accidents. Can coma patients remember? How to transfer assets during medical emergency? Those searches don't prove anything, Marcus said, but his voice was shaking now. I was researching. I was trying to understand what happened to Emma. After the fact? Chen raised an eyebrow. Because these searches were made at 2 p.m. The accident didn't happen until 7:30 p.m. If this story is keeping you glued to your screen, please hit that subscribe button and give us a like. We put so much work into bringing you these incredible stories. Sarah watched as Marcus's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the cool temperature of the room. We also pulled your car's GPS data, Torres continued. You want to explain why you drove to a Cash for Gold store at 10:45 p.m. on the night of the accident, while your wife was in emergency surgery? Marcus said nothing. You sold Emma's jewelry, Chen said, including a family heirloom ring worth considerably more than the $8,000 you got for it. You needed quick cash because you knew the embezzlement investigation was coming. This is all circumstantial, Marcus finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Chen leaned forward. Let me tell you what we think happened. Emma found the bank statements. She confronted you. She told you she was going to the police. You panicked. You'd been stealing for months, living beyond your means, trying to maintain a lifestyle you couldn't afford. Emma was going to destroy everything. Patricia Lopez was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. So you made a plan, Chen continued. You picked a fight with her in the car. You drove to a section of the Kennedy Expressway known for accidents. You waited until the conditions were right. Rain, traffic, darkness. And then you grabbed that steering wheel and sent the car into the barrier. No. But you made one critical mistake, Marcus. You underestimated your wife. You thought the crash would kill her. When it didn't, you thought she'd never wake up. The doctor said she probably wouldn't. But Emma is stronger than you gave her credit for. Marcus's hands were shaking. I want my lawyer. I'm not saying another word. That's fine, Chen said, standing up. Marcus Rodriguez, you are under arrest for attempted murder, embezzlement, fraud, and filing a false police report. Officers, please read Mr. Rodriguez his rights. Officer Davis moved forward with handcuffs as Torres began the Miranda warning. You have the right to remain attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney... Marcus didn't resist as the handcuffs clicked into place, but he was crying now, great heaving sobs. I didn't mean to hurt her. I panicked. Everything was falling apart. I just wanted her to stop talking, to give me time to fix things. I never meant... Sir, please stop talking. His own lawyer would later wish he'd said, but it was too late. The confession was recorded, witnessed by 5 people in the room. Tell us in the comments, what punishment do you think Marcus deserves, and where are you watching from? We love hearing from our viewers worldwide. As they led Marcus from the conference room, Patricia Lopez collapsed into Sarah's arms, sobbing. My baby girl. He tried to kill my baby girl. Dr. Patterson put a hand on Patricia's shoulder. Emma is safe now, and she's getting stronger every day. Would you like to see her? They walked together to Emma's room on the 4th floor. Emma was awake, sitting up slightly in bed, still weak but alert. When she saw the handcuffed Marcus being led past her room by police officers, she began to cry. Not from fear this time, but from relief. Patricia rushed to her daughter's bedside. Mija, my beautiful girl, you're safe now. You're safe. Emma squeezed her mother's hand, then looked at Sarah. Thank you, she whispered. You believed me. Sarah smiled, her own eyes misting. You saved yourself, Emma. You found the strength to tell the truth. That took incredible courage. Over the next several hours, Detective Chen wrapped up the preliminary investigation. The Financial Crimes Division seized Marcus's accounts and began the process of returning the embezzled funds to Westfield Construction. The company's CEO, Donald Westfield, was shocked to learn of the theft. Marcus had been a trusted employee for 7 years. "He seemed so reliable," Westfield told Detective Chen during his interview. "Quiet, methodical, never any red flags. How did we miss this?" "Because he was good at hiding it," Chen replied. "These kinds of embezzlers often are. They create elaborate systems, they're meticulous about covering their tracks. If Emma hadn't discovered those bank statements, he might have continued for years." The Illinois State's Attorney's Office immediately began preparing the case. Assistant State's Attorney David Zhao reviewed all the evidence and determined they had an overwhelming case for attempted murder in the first degree, along with multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. "This is as solid as they come," Zhao told Detective Chen. "The phone searches, the GPS data, the financial motive, the witnessed confession, and most importantly, the victim's testimony. Marcus Rodriguez is going to prison for a very long time." Chapter 3: Recovery and Justice. 3 months after Marcus Rodriguez's arrest, spring arrived in Chicago with the tentative warmth that made residents forget the brutal winter. Trees along Michigan Avenue budded with green, and Lake Michigan sparkled under clearer skies. Inside St. Mary's Hospital, Emma Rodriguez sat in a wheelchair by her room window, watching the city come alive below. Welcome to the final chapter. If you're still with us, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your thoughts on Emma's incredible journey. The physical therapy had been grueling. Emma's body had atrophied during 3 months in a coma, and learning to walk again required patience, determination, and the support of an exceptional medical team. Sarah Mitchell had been there for much of it, often stopping by after her shifts to encourage Emma through the difficult days. "How are you feeling today?" Sarah asked, entering the room with Emma's afternoon medications. "Stronger," Emma said, her speech now clear and natural, with only occasional moments of searching for words, a residual effect of the brain injury that Dr. Patterson assured her would continue to improve. "Dr. Chang says I can try walking with just the cane next week." "That's wonderful progress." Sarah checked Emma's vitals, pleased with everything she saw. The young woman who had arrived on a stretcher 6 months ago, broken and unconscious, barely resembled the person sitting before her now. Emma had lost weight, her face more angular, and there was a hardness in her eyes that came from surviving something traumatic, but there was also determination, resilience, and hope. Patricia Lopez had relocated temporarily to Chicago, staying in Emma's apartment in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, taking care of all the practical details Emma couldn't manage during recovery. She arrived now carrying a garment bag. "The prosecutor's office called," Patricia said. "The preliminary hearing is next Tuesday. You need to be there to testify before the grand jury." Emma nodded slowly. She'd been preparing for this, working with Assistant State's Attorney David Zhao and a victim's advocate to understand the legal process. The thought of seeing Marcus again filled her with anxiety, but also with a strange sense of purpose. "I'm ready," Emma said. "I need to do this." Have you or someone you know ever had to testify in court? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories help others feel less alone. The following Tuesday, Emma arrived at the Cook County Criminal Courts Building, a massive stone structure on South California Avenue that had witnessed countless dramas of justice over the decades. Patricia pushed Emma's wheelchair. She wasn't quite ready to walk the long courthouse corridors, while Detective Chen accompanied them for security and support. The grand jury room was smaller than Emma expected, with the jurors seated in rows, their faces attentive and serious. Marcus Rodriguez sat at the defense table with his attorney, Gregory Hammond, a high-priced criminal defense lawyer from a downtown firm. When Marcus saw Emma, he looked away quickly, unable to meet her eyes. Emma testified for over an hour, describing the discovery of the bank statements, the confrontation with Marcus, the terrifying moment in the car when he grabbed the steering wheel, and the months of darkness that followed. Her voice remained steady throughout, though Patricia wept quietly in the gallery. "Mrs. Rodriguez," defense attorney Hammond said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you suffered a severe traumatic brain injury? That your memories of that night could be affected by the trauma?" "My memories are clear," Emma replied firmly. "Crystal clear. I remember every word Marcus said that night." I remember the look on his face when he grabbed that wheel. I remember watching him run away while I was trapped in the car, unable to move, knowing I might die. But you were unconscious for 3 months. The brain can create false memories during recovery. My brain didn't create anything, Emma interrupted. The evidence supports everything I've said. His phone searches before the accident. The GPS data showing where he went afterward, the jewelry he sold while I was in surgery, the embezzled money. Those aren't false memories. Those are facts. If Emma's courage is inspiring you, please like this video and subscribe to see more stories of survival and justice. Assistant State's Attorney Zhao stood. Your Honor, we'd also like to present testimony from Nurse Sarah Mitchell, who observed the defendant's interactions with Mrs. Rodriguez during her recovery. Sarah took the stand, describing the fear responses she'd documented, the elevated heart rates, the terror in Emma's eyes whenever Marcus entered the room. She presented her detailed notes page after page of medical observations that painted a clear picture of a trauma victim in the presence of her attacker. The grand jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They returned an indictment on all charges: attempted murder in the first degree, embezzlement, fraud, filing false police reports, and theft. Marcus Rodriguez's bail was set at $1 million, which his family could not afford. He would remain in Cook County Jail awaiting trial. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. Emma's case had attracted media attention. The nurse who discovered the truth, the husband who tried to kill his wife and nearly got away with it. Detective Chen helped shield Emma from the cameras as they left. Mrs. Rodriguez, how does it feel to know your husband will face justice? Emma paused, turning to face the cameras. Patricia moved to stop her, but Emma shook her head slightly. She needed to say this. Marcus Rodriguez made a choice, Emma said clearly. He chose greed over integrity. He chose violence over honesty. He chose to try to end my life rather than face the consequences of his actions. I'm grateful to everyone who believed me, especially Nurse Sarah Mitchell, who noticed when something was wrong and had the courage to investigate. I'm grateful to Detective Chen and her team for their thorough work. And I want other women in abusive situations to know, your voice matters, your truth matters. Don't be afraid to speak up. The clip played on local news that evening and was picked up by national media. Emma became an inadvertent spokesperson for domestic violence survivors, though she never sought the attention. Drop a comment telling us, what would you say if you were Emma? And don't forget to subscribe. We share important stories like this every week. Over the following months, Emma focused on her recovery. Physical therapy 3 times a week helped her regain strength and coordination. She graduated from wheelchair to walker to cane, finally walking unassisted by midsummer. The brain injury caused occasional headaches and some difficulty with complex mathematical calculations. Ironic, given that Marcus was the accountant, but her doctors were amazed at her progress. She also began seeing a therapist, Dr. Rebecca Stein, who specialized in trauma recovery and PTSD. The sessions were difficult, forcing Emma to confront not just the accident, but the entire relationship with Marcus, recognizing the warning signs she'd missed or rationalized over the years. He was controlling, Emma told Dr. Stein during one session. I see it now. He monitored my phone, questioned where I'd been, who I'd talked to. I thought it was love, attention, but it was control. Many women don't recognize these patterns until after the fact, Dr. Stein said gently. What matters is that you recognize them now, and you'll never tolerate them again. Sarah Mitchell remained in Emma's life as a friend, not just a former nurse. They met for coffee regularly in the hospital cafeteria, and Sarah watched with pride as Emma grew stronger, more confident, more herself. I've decided to go back to school, Emma told Sarah one afternoon in August. I was a graphic designer before, but I think I want to do something different now. Maybe social work, helping other women who've been through domestic violence. That's wonderful, Sarah said warmly. You'd be incredible at that. I also want to do something for you, Emma continued. You saved my life, Sarah. You noticed when something was wrong, and you didn't ignore it. You could have dismissed my fear responses as confusion from the brain injury, but you didn't. You believed me. Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. I was just doing my job. No, you were being human. You cared enough to pay attention. That's not something everyone does. If this story has touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear Emma's message of hope and survival. Marcus Rodriguez's trial began in November, nearly a year after the accident. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: financial records detailing the embezzlement, phone records showing the incriminating searches, GPS data tracking his movements, testimony from Emma and multiple witnesses, and most damning of all, Marcus's own recorded confession from that day in the hospital conference room. The defense tried to argue diminished capacity, claiming Marcus had been under extreme stress, had experienced a mental break, hadn't intended to kill Emma but only to scare her. But the evidence of premeditation, the phone searches hours before the accident, the deliberate choice of location, the jewelry sale immediately afterward, destroyed that argument. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Emma sat in the courtroom each day, her mother on one side, Sarah Mitchell on the other. When the verdict was read, she felt Patricia's hand squeeze hers tightly. On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant, Marcus Rodriguez, guilty. On the count of embezzlement in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. Marcus showed no emotion as the verdict was read, sitting stone-faced beside his attorney. But when the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing was scheduled, he stood slowly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely audible. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I was weak. I destroyed everything. Your life, your trust, our marriage. I deserve whatever punishment I receive. I just want you to know that I'm sorry." Emma stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood as well, leaning slightly on her cane. "I don't forgive you," she said clearly. "But I hope someday you understand the full weight of what you did. You didn't just try to kill me. You betrayed every promise you ever made. You stole from people who trusted you. And when I woke up from that coma, you kept coming to the hospital, kept pretending to care, knowing what you'd done. That's not weakness, Marcus. That's evil. I hope you have a very long time in prison to think about that." What do you think about Emma's response? Tell us in the comments, and please subscribe if you admire Emma's strength. 6 weeks later, Marcus Rodriguez was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder, with additional consecutive sentences for the other crimes, totaling 32 years. With good behavior, he might be eligible for parole in 20 years, when he'd be 52 years old and Emma would be 52. Emma attended the sentencing, but left immediately afterward, not wanting to give Marcus or the media any more of her time. She had plans that afternoon, her first day of classes at the University of Illinois at Chicago, where she'd enrolled in the social work program. As she walked across campus, her cane tucked under her arm, she only needed it occasionally now, she felt something she hadn't felt in over a year. Hope. Not just hope for her own future, but hope that she could help others, that her terrible experience might serve a purpose beyond herself. Sarah Mitchell watched the sentencing on the courthouse livest.